Hi, so welcome to this Resilience Tools for Parents series. We've got a series of 4 webinars, maybe more in the future. Today's webinar, we're going to be talking about decreasing challenging behaviors and increasing resilience. My name is Beni Garcia and I work here at Polara Health. Love it here. It's wonderful. I love doing parent support and education. I also love teaching emotional regulation skills to children through music. And I've been working with children and families in a variety of capacities for, my entire adult life. So that's a little bit about me. This series, this Resilience Tools for Parents series, is made available to you by the Crisis Response Network through a grant from SAMHSA to improve mental health tools and support through this global pandemic. I know it seems like we're kind of at the end, but it really hasn't ended, has it? And so as all this is going on for us, our stress responses are triggered and it really affects everybody. Nobody is untouched from the effects of this pandemic. This series is really meant to support families and children. That's this particular series, that's what that's all about. So in our time together for this webinar, we're going to be talking about the stress response. We're also going to talk about the brain development and processing. And we're going to talk about simple but effective tools to help decrease some of those challenging behaviors and increase bounce back from stress for both you and your children. So let's just jump in. Now, if this was a group session, I would ask you how old your children are. So you can think about the ages of your children right now. And then I want you to kind of think about if you could magically erase any one challenging behavior, what would that be? And I really encourage you to just think about that right now, just for real. Just take a moment, sit back and go, what is one challenging behavior that, it's just so challenging? Think about that. And here in a past class, a couple people answered on the screen. You could see one of them is whining. Another one is raging, like when their child gets really in that raging kind of state. What is it for you? Let's just kind of think through that for a minute. Okay. Now I want you to think about that behavior, like really get there, really feel what happens in your body, feel like, imagine what's going through your head. What are you thinking? How does your body, how do your muscles feel? Just really go there. And when you're really there, I want you to take and kind of grade yourself or rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 means, you're at peace. You're in a state of Zen, you're okay. And then number 10 would be you're volcanic. You are just going to burst and things are not going to be pretty because this particular behavior is so challenging and you don't know what to do about it anymore. Okay, so give yourself a number and just really think about that number or write it down. So, because I want you to remember that number. Okay. Now we're going to do something. You might already know what I'm about to do, but we're going to go ahead and we're just going to take a moment to breathe. So bear with me. Okay. I would just kind of go with me and go ahead and let's just follow this video. Let's breathe together. That was literally less than a minute. So now let's just take a second and remember, or just kind of rate yourself now. Where are you at now on a scale of 1 to 10? So, you know, just now notice what that other number was. Is it different? Is it the same? Did it go down? I would guess that for most of us, the number went down at least by 1. And that's important to focus on. It's important to kind of honor that. Really, deep breathing, among many other regulating activities, can be a vital tool for helping parents. Now, don't get mad at me yet. I know you want to sit here and you're like, I already know about breathing. Get that. Just kind of bear with me for a minute. Regulating ourselves is going to be one of the most important things that we can do as a parent. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So first, before we go any further, let's just kind of get on the same page on what is resilience, right? So I just Googled resilience, because isn't that what we all do? I just Google for everything. And so Google says that resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. Resilience is also the ability of a substance or an object to be able to spring back. So number 2, let's honor the fact that we're not objects. We're human beings. Dr. Bruce Perry, he's someone that I study and I highly respect, and I'll talk to you about him in a little bit too. He says that, and he's not the only one, he says that resiliency, when we think about a rubber band and it just goes right back to how it was, that's an example of resiliency. But that's not people. Okay? When we stretch, when people get stretched too far, we don't ever go back to the way we were. We're human beings. We don't do that. We come back different. So when we're talking about resilience in humans, we're talking about our ability to recover into a place where we're going to do better than we were before, or we're going to be able to keep moving forward through life in an okay way. We're going to be able to just work through it and so it's not like we're going to be exactly the same, because we're not. When people go through trauma, people go through high levels of stress, we're never going to be the same. And we have to kind of respect that and kind of be aware that that's what happens. And resilience also nods to the idea that we can bounce forward, right? So we're not just bouncing back and be perfect, but we might actually bounce forward, and we're going to come forward maybe with new tools and new perspectives and new things to be able to move forward. So when we're talking about resiliency in children and in parents, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about wanting to develop in ourselves and in our children that ability to be able to move forward after we have these big events or large amounts of stress, to be able to move forward in a different but maybe better way. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about when I refer to. And we also want to think about this pandemic that we've been through, right? We've all kind of been through this global event, and we're really never going to be the same. I mean, let's be honest about that. But so what are some things that we can take from our experience since March of 2020? It's been over a year. That actually is going to help us to bounce forward. What are some things, I wonder? And so the question here is actually, let's to kind of think about what are some of the stressors that we actually did experience. But we can also, after thinking about those and meditating on some of those, is to how can we make those stressors, what are the lessons that we've learned? What are the things that we can take from our experiences so that we can move forward in a resilient way? All right. Let's go back first. Let's see. So did I go and make sure Okay, no, that is right. Okay, so resilience is directly related to how each person's body responds to stress. Okay, so I'm gonna say that again because it's an important concept. So resilience is directly related to how each person's body responds to stress. So let's unpack that a little bit. So let's talk about stress. Not fun. Stress is not just in your head. Okay, sometimes we just, oh, I'm so stressed. People just will say things like, calm down. I don't know if that's ever helped anybody, but it's not just in your head. It's actually a whole body experience. And so when we think about a whole body experience, we're talking about there are hormones that are directly involved in these quote unquote feelings of stress. There are reasons why you feel the way why you feel the way you feel, and it's actually biological. it's science. So, you know, if you think about that exercise at the beginning of the presentation where we talked about, you know, thinking about that one challenging behavior that was hard, think back to, was it just in your head? Did you feel it in your body? Do you clench your muscles? Do you have feelings in your stomach? Do you start to breathe slower or faster? Are you more tense? Like, what's going on in your body? Because I guarantee you, it's not just in your head. There's a whole biological thing that's happening. There's sensations. And those sensations are made possible by a whole cocktail of stress hormones that are actually surging through your body. Okay. So let me keep going over here. So it's a whole body experience that affects how you interpret, behave, and react. Think of stress hormones the way you would any other substance that alters your body. Okay, so let's talk about how stress affects your brain function. But first, you know, let's talk a little bit about brain development. So before we go forward, let me go back to this idea of the substances. Okay, so I want you to imagine that you have been given a very, very huge, what is that, venti, or there's even a bigger cup of coffee over there. Trenta, I think it's called a Trenta. So imagine you've got this big, huge Trenta with like 5 shots of espresso, and you drank it down because you felt like you needed it. Had, I don't know how many pumps of sugar and all sorts of fun things in there. So you drank it. I want you to imagine how you're going to feel now. Okay, so you, in a normal everyday situation, have the ability to be calm and grounded, and have steady hands and think slowly and clearly. Okay, normally in good circumstances, we all usually have those capacities. Okay, however, if we drank that Trenta cup of coffee with all of those shots of espresso, even though you have the ability to do those things, you may not be able to access those things. Right? So your hands might be jittery, your brain is going to be darting here and there. You may not be able to just really focus on one thing. You know, there's a lot might be going on for you, right? So even though you have the capacity, you are not accessing those things. Stress hormone is exactly the same way. You have the capacity to be a wonderful, patient, understanding, wise, creative parent. But when you have high levels of stress hormone surging through your body for whatever reason, whether it has to do with work or your children or your health, you're not going to be able to access all those beautiful qualities that you have. It's biological. And the same goes for your children. Your children may have the ability, you've seen it, to be these wonderful, vibrant children that have no problems regulating themselves and having wonderful conversations and dealing with issues well. They might have that capacity, maybe. But when they have levels of stress surging through their body, it's just like they took drank that Trenta cup of coffee. It's biological. And the minute we start to honor that and start to work with that, that's the minute that things are going to get a little bit different. And we're going to be able to access a little more resilience, maybe just with that shift in perspective. So bear with me and we'll talk through that a little bit. So now let's get into a little bit of that, a little bit of brain development here. Okay, let's walk through this. So here we have a and anatomically correct. This is not perfect, okay? But this is just kind of symbolizing what's going on in the brain here. So we have a little child here. In the very middle, we've got this yellow area, which is the brainstem. This is the part of the brain that develops first. Bear with me, there's a reason why I'm going through this. Plus, it's fascinating. So this is part of the brain that develops first. This is the part that kind of governs all of our sensory motor stuff. And it's also our survival, most primal part of our brain. Fight or flight lives there. It's the part that develops first. When babies are born, that's the part that is almost fully mature, because it's really the part that governs the heartbeat and all of that. Okay, the next thing to start developing, and it starts developing pretty quickly too, but it doesn't mature until later on in life, sometime in the childhood. I'm not sure exactly when it matures fully, but that's going to be your middle brain or your limbic area. And that's where all of your emotions live, and your need to connect with other humans lives there. Okay, your ability to attach to other people lives there. All of your emotions, your reactivity, and your need for safety, you're always searching for safety, all that lives in that green part, that limbic. Okay, finally, the last thing to fully develop is the blue area, which is that cortical brain. The part that makes us the most human is this front part right here, the prefrontal cortex. It's the last thing to develop. Some people will tell you it won't fully mature until you're 25, 26, 27 years old, maybe even 28. Everybody's different, but really it takes that long for it to fully develop. And that's the part of the brain that's wise, and it can think clearly, and it can actually use words and language. The other parts of the brain aren't very good at that. It understands cause and effect. Okay, the other parts of the brain don't get that. It can be logical, it can be reasonable. The other parts of the brain can't. These are really key, important things to know. So this is the way the brain develops. The other thing that's important to know is that not only is this the way the brain develops, but it's also the way the brain processes everything. Okay, so everything has to come into the brain through the bottom brainstem. It comes in through the brainstem, and its job is to work its way through your brain until it makes to the prefrontal cortex so that you can deal with this information well. Okay, everything comes in from the bottom and works its way up. Bottom up, bottom up, bottom up. That's important. That's why I keep saying it. And so when I'm talking to you, for example, these words are hopefully coming into your brainstem, and it's working its way up until it gets to your prefrontal cortex. It happens so fast, and so that you actually are picking up what I'm putting down. However, if you have a migraine, or if you just stubbed your toe, my words might get stuck in a different part of your brain. You may not be able to really hear or absorb what I'm saying, because your pain, your throbbing pain is keeping a lot of the information that's coming in your brainstem. And so you're more primal, and all you want to do is fix the pain. Okay, so here's a case in point. Imagine you did just stub your toe and it is throbbing, and one of your children runs up and says, hey, you know what? Can I go to Johnny's house? Because I haven't. And you, all you're like is, stop! Don't talk to me right now. You're in pain. You're in pain. Information is not going to pass go or collect 200. It is getting stuck in the bottom of your brain because you're in that brainstem. You're in that survival mode. You're in that instinct mode. You need to get rid of the pain. Okay. Let's talk a little bit. Here's another way to look at the brain. Okay, I know this is a little, it's kind of another fun way to look at it. So let's say that the bottom, the brain stem, we're going to call that the tiger, this primitive tiger. And we want that primitive tiger to be curled up, sleeping, rhythmic, repetitively. We really don't want it awake. Okay, we don't want to be operating out of that tiger. We want it to be sleeping. Okay, the limbic area, that's our meerkat. Remember Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King? So if you don't know much about meerkats, I'll tell you this. They love to live in communities. They love each other. Okay, so community and connection is important to these little guys. And they live in holes. And what they do is they send one or more little dudes out of their holes. And what they're doing is they're searching the horizon for danger. Okay? And if they see danger, they go, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And they wake up all of the family in the holes and it's mobilized for this danger. Okay, so that's kind of what the limbic area does. The limbic area is scanning the world for danger. And if they feel like they're going to get in trouble or somebody's mad at them or something's going to happen, if they don't feel safe for whatever reason, that limbic area goes, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And guess who wakes up? It's the tiger. Okay, follow me? And so finally, at the very top in the cortical areas, we've got a wise owl. Oh, so wise. He's can look out and be strategic and figure things out and calm and patient. What happens when our little meerkat gets a little hyped up because danger is coming, whether it's real or imagined, doesn't matter. If it's real or imagined, it's away. So there goes your ability to talk or use good language, your ability to reason, your ability to be calm and patient, your ability to strategize, it flies away. And now the tiger's in charge. So the owl is reflective, wise, and intelligent. That meerkat is reactive and emotional. And it always needs validation. And the tiger is reflexive. It's all about the senses and sensory stuff. It's primal, and it's all about that fight or flight. So when we look at those three areas of the brain, we can see that they work really well together if they're together. But if the owl flies away, we're going to have some problems dealing with the world. Okay. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about how Bruce Perry uses this information that we just talked about. He teaches this, and he says, so here we have we have our brain. Okay, here at the bottom, if you can see in the light gray, it says brainstem. And then the next one says diencephalon. And then the next one is the limbic area. That's what we call the meerkat. And then that top part is the cortex or the owl. Okay. So because we know that everything processes from the bottom up, Dr. Bruce Perry, he explains to us that there is a sequence of engagement or the process that we want to follow if we want to have effective interactions with other human beings. Now, a quick background on Dr. Perry. He's internationally respected as an expert in child trauma. He was at Waco, he was at Columbine, he was at Sandy Hook. I could go on and on. He's written a few books. His latest book is called What happened to you? He wrote that with Oprah, and it is an incredible book. I highly recommend it. It really kind of talks about this the way the brain processes and the stress response, and helps us to understand why people do the things that they do. And so we have a different perspective on it. So going back to this model that he created, and it's the 3 R's, right? And you may have already heard about them, right? Is regulate, relate, reason. So if we want to have really positive engagement or interactions with other humans, with your children, with your partners, with your friends, with your family, coworkers, we want to first regulate. We want to make sure that that other person is regulated. And if they're not, stop. Do not pass go, do not collect 200, right? Stop and do whatever you need to do to help that other human regulate that brainstem. What can you do to help that tiger go back to sleep? Okay. If they seem relatively regulated, then you can go to the next one, which is relate. Find a way to connect with that other human. Find a way to just make that human connection, because that helps the meerkat feel happy and safe. Okay. And then, and only then, when regulate and relate has been done adequately, then we can have a conversation about whatever it is that's at hand, right? We can be reasonable, we can have logic, we can problem solve, we can teach and learn. But we've got to start at making sure that we're regulated first. Then we got to make sure we create a safe atmosphere with connection. And then we might have a chance to be able to have this interaction that you're looking for. If you skip some of these steps, you're going to find that you may not have an effective interaction. Okay. So let's just kind of talk just a teeny bit about, how do we regulate? Like, what does that even mean, right? So being dysregulated means that you're going either one way or another. You might either be hyper aroused, meaning your sympathetic nervous system is super triggered. So you've got your heartbeat going fast, you're hyper, you can't think, you're reactive, okay. So how can we calm that part down? A lot of times it's the rhythmic and repetitive activities that are the things that can help calm that down. There's reasons for that. We don't have time to talk about those reasons, but you can just try this out. If you're super dysregulated, try going for a walk. Maybe you already do this. Why is it so effective? It's rhythmic, it's repetitive, and it's helping you work those hormones. It's helping those hormones to get regulated. Okay, rhythmic, repetitive, walking, running, rocking in your rocking chair, using a fidget, sometimes even sitting down, coloring, that rhythmic, repetitive. There's a lot of different rhythmic, repetitive actions. Sometimes just talking to someone else, but if you're super dysregulated, talking is going to be really hard. You can't really, because that owl's gone. Talking, we need to have a little bit of owl come back so you can actually use your words. Okay, sometimes regulating is as simple as hydrating, getting some water in us, or eating, regulating that blood sugar, or taking a nap. Okay, sometimes that. Using our muscles, things like that. Okay, those are all examples of regulating. And sometimes to help another person regulate, sometimes that means don't talk and you regulate yourself. We all have these things called mirror neurons that we're just contagious. We're just contagious. And so if that other person is super dysregulated, whether it's a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, or whether it's an older adult having a fit because they didn't get what they wanted at the store or like the sandwich they ordered, if you're near them and you're actually doing everything you can to regulate yourself, so you're being conscious about your breathing, there's something called co-regulation that can occur. So these are things to consider when it comes to regulating. So then how do we relate, right? In order to make a connection and to relate, sometimes people have a hard time with this step if they don't agree with the behavior the other person is exhibiting. So if the other child is being super rude and disrespectful, people have a hard time relating to that. Like they're not going to connect with someone that's being rude. Why would they do that? Well, why is because it would calm their meerkat, it would calm their limbic system so that you can talk about how you would like to be treated. So this might look like, you know what, I can see that you're really mad at me right now. I get it. I might be mad too, right? You don't have to agree with them in order to just validate what you see they're experiencing. Right? So you're really angry at me right now, or you're really frustrated. I see that. This is a way when people feel validated, they can't help it. They calm down. The stress response starts to recede when people feel validated. It's a powerful, powerful tool to use. And then the very, very top, once the tiger is back to sleep and the meerkat has settled down, then we can actually talk and problem solve and say, hey, you know, let's talk about that. You know what, it's not okay to talk to me like that, but you know what, you can tell me this. I do want to hear when you're upset, or whatever the issue is, right? If the child wants a cookie, I get it. You really want a cookie. That would be relate. I get it. You want that cookie. You want that cookie so bad. You want that cookie. I get it. I want cookies too. But once that child is calm enough, then you can go, okay, so here's the deal. You're gonna get the cookie. Find the yes. In the reason, find the yes. Okay, find the yes. So you can communicate the limit at that point. You can't have cookies before dinner, babe, but you can definitely have the cookie. Where should we put it so it can be waiting for you after dinner? You know. So the higher the stress hormone in the body, the lower the brain function, right? That's what we've been talking about. The higher the stress function or the stress hormone, that's when the upper parts of the brain starts to shut down and the lower parts take over. Bruce Perry calls these lower parts of the brain the dumb parts, which just because they're not intelligent, right? They don't have an IQ, they're primitive. So our goal in working with our children that are so hyper aroused for whatever reason is to help them learn how to regulate those emotions, how to regulate those hormones, so you can have these interactions that true learning can happen. Because when the stress hormone is down, then we can actually talk in a way that they might actually be able to receive it. So now let's tie this back to when we were breathing at the beginning of this whole webinar. Remember, we just took that minute to breathe. What do you think is happening to the stress hormone when you're breathing? It's receding. It's receding. And a really big point that I don't know if I don't think I honed in on this point is before you can ever do regulate, relate, reason on another human, whether it's your child or anyone else, you've got to do it for yourself. So before you can ever even use this model on your children, teach yourself how to regulate. A dysregulated adult can never regulate another human being. It's got to start with us. So learning techniques that help us to just calm ourselves down in the moment, whether that's the breathing so simply, whether that's self-talk, it's going to the bathroom and splashing cold water on your face, whatever it takes. That's step one. In fact, sometimes that's the only step you need in certain situations. So, yeah, I mean, I know that most of the people that are watching this, if you didn't care about being a good parent, you wouldn't be watching this, right? You wouldn't. So that to me tells me that if you're watching this, you probably already have some really good parenting skills. And the best parents are always wanting to learn more, always wanting to have more self-reflection, always wanting to know new things or better things or whatever so that they can be better parents. So this is a huge thing to remember. If you want to access some of those awesome skills that you already have, you need to learn how to lower our own stress response so that we can access those skills. And the same thing for our children. We got to help them learn how to regulate. So we're going to end this session with we're going to kind of walk through an article that was published in Psychology Today. The author of this article kind of outlines Dr. Bruce Perry's strategies for creating a home life that can increase you and your family's resilience to stress. And so after everything we've talked about, what you also know is that these things that we're going to talk about are going to really help lower the stress response. Okay. So here is the link. It's kind of a hard one for you to have to read it. I bet you could probably search for the pandemic toolkit parents need, and then you can maybe add Gary's name on it, and then maybe you can pull up if you want to refer to that article. I'm sure if you Google a few of these things, they'll pop up for you. So in the article, this comes directly from Dr. Bruce Perry's slide deck. He has 1 million slides. And just so that you're aware, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little logo that says the Neurosequential Network. That's the organization that Dr. Bruce Perry and the people he works with, they created this. So it's neuro, so brain, sequential, 1, 2, 3, network. And he's got a whole bunch of initiatives. He's got the neurosequential model for caregivers, neurosequential model for therapeutics, which has like an assessment it helps people do, neurosequential model for educators, and on and on. He's got a lot of initiatives where he just knows the power of this information, regulate, relate, reason, and how the brain develops, that it can really help so many people. So he's trying to create these programs to help. In fact, coincidentally, the Arizona Department of Education has actually adopted parts of the neurosequential model for educators and has an initiative where they're actually training schools to be able to incorporate a lot of these concepts into the school at large, so that they can become more trauma informed and really work with that stress response. So if we look at this slide here, let's look at the very top part of the slide first. So it says managing stress, shifting your pattern. So stress itself is not the enemy. I mean, we've been talking bad about stress this whole time. And so I should backtrack for a second and say stress is not the enemy. It's the type of stress. So predictable, moderate, and controllable stress, that's the box on the right-hand side, that's the kind of stress that helps increase our resilience to stress. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the kind of stress that is going to make it harder for us, and it actually increases our vulnerability to stress, which means we get knocked down and we don't get up again, right? So the kind of stress that we're watching for is chaotic, it's severe, it's prolonged, we don't know when it's going to end, and it's uncontrollable. When we think about this pandemic, it's a bit chaotic. Like one minute we have to wear masks, another minute we don't. 1 minute we have to work from home, another no we don't. Kids get to go to school, kids have to use Zoom, kids get to go back, now they don't. That's really chaotic. It's severe, like especially at the beginning, right? You couldn't even buy toilet paper. It's prolonged. Like this started in March 2020. Come on, can it be over yet? And it's uncontrollable. We don't have much control over this pandemic and what it's doing. Okay. But it's also, think about this in terms of your own life and the life for your children. Okay. These are the kinds of things that increase their vulnerability. So the things underneath, so the second half of the slide, it shows things that are actually going to increase your vulnerability. And I don't want to camp too long on things that we don't want in our lives. So I'm going to go through them really quickly, and then we'll camp a little bit more on the things that are actually going to help us. So in terms of increasing our vulnerability, we've got minimal daily structure, right? That's not predictable. Comfort eating, that's severe. It's not, the body can't hang on to that. It doesn't have the nutrition that it needs to stabilize. Too much media, right? That's prolonged. It's only using one part of the brain. It's ignoring the other parts of the brain that need to stay active. And it can cause, like, have you ever been on a screen for too long, or a child, and then you say your name, that person's name, and they go, what? Leave me alone. I got to finish this, right? Their stress response, they don't have much resilience at that point. Mm-hmm. But if they learn how to balance that, they're going to be able to mitigate that a little. Minimal daily or minimal exercise. Our bodies need to move to regulate all those hormones. We literally need the movement. Emotional isolation, self-focused, sleep disruption. That's a hard one. If you have sleep disruption, if you have a hard time sleeping, that maybe could be number one on your list to try to start to work on, maybe with your doctor. Maybe look up some tips first and see if there's anything there that could help you. But we all know that if we don't have a good night's sleep, we wake up in the morning and a child says something to you, you're like, ah, right? You don't have much patience at that point or energy to be able to handle it. We're stuck in that lower part of our brain. And then negative ruminative, it comes from the root word to ruminate, which is what like a cow will do, right? They put hay or they put that grass in their mouth and they go, they chew over and over and over, and they can just chew forever. That's to ruminate. So when we have these negative thoughts and we just chew and chew and chew over and over again, we get stuck, and we literally grow what some neuroscientists call like little trees, like these little neurons. They grow these trees that make you, the more we do something, the stronger these connections get in our brain. The stronger the connections are in our brain, then we don't have to think about it anymore. That becomes our default, right? So we learn how to ride a bike. We ride a bike. Oh, we're so good at it. Really, really strong. We get on a bike. We don't have to think about it because we just use this little tree. That's what happens when we're overly negative. We can't help it. We just go right back to that way of thinking because we've got these neuronal trees that are nice to have really strong roots. And so we're just gonna we're gonna default to that. So in order to change that, we literally have to starve some of those connections. So it becomes a real trick, and it needs practice. It's like building a muscle. So now let's focus a little bit more on the things that will actually help us. Okay, let's spend a little more of our energy into what will be good for building resilience in ourselves and in our children. So we've got the daily structure. Okay, so basically it's going to be the opposite of everything we just read. Daily structure is so important. It's predictable. When we wake up in the morning, we get a little bit of stress, but it's okay. Our bodies can handle it. In fact, we need a little bit of that cortisol to get us out of the bed, right? We need a little bit of it. But so when we can have that predictability in our lives, it really helps us, right? So if you were going to go to a conference somewhere out of town, you would probably want to know where it is. What time does it start? Where's the room that you're going to be in? Do I need any supplies? What's the weather like? Like, you're going to want to know. And the more you know, the calmer you get. because you prepare, you mentally prepare. And kids are the same. So if you've got a whole day planned and you're like, kids get in the car, they have no idea what's going on. If you let them know, you empower them, it calms the stress response. So daily structure is so important. And if you stick in those structures some little rituals, like we sing a song before we go to bed, or we do some kind of a prayer before food, or everybody has their own rituals. They enrich our lives, and they're predictable, and people find they feel grounded in some of these things. So consider that for your children, consider that for yourself. Family meals helps you feel like you're not alone. You're not alone. Right? So making time to be together, this really increases our resilience, especially if you can talk about life. Limited media. So it's unreasonable maybe to say that no media, but teach our children and ourselves. I mean, I'm just as guilty, to budget our time on screens. That will really help us to increase our resilience. Finding ways to move, making sure that our children have lots of ways to move. We've got to build that into their daily life. It will help metabolize that stress hormone. Sleep hygiene, helping others, reaching out, all these kinds of things. For example, like if you created a culture in your family where maybe you bake cookies for your next door neighbor, maybe you help pull weeds for your neighbor, maybe you help at a soup kitchen or whatever. When you build into your family this outward focus that it's not all about us, it's we also are here on this earth to help others, it creates a little bit of this resiliency, this autonomy, like I have this power to create good in the world. And it really helps shift perspective and create, it just helps create resilience. It's an amazing perspective changer. We've talked about the importance of sleep, that sleep hygiene, and then positive future focus. And I'm not talking about find the silver lining in everything, you guys, or just be positive all the time, chin up. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, honor if you're in a bad space, honor it. You know what? I'm really angry right now. And this situation is driving me crazy. I hate it. So honor where you're at. And instead of ruminating, you can say, okay, I honor that in myself. And now I'm going to take a deep breath. And what I can do about this is this. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Right? What is it that you can focus on? I mean, what is it that you do have control over, and focus on that one thing? Do it. That's what we're talking about here. Okay. All right. So I could talk on and on. There's so much more that we could have talked about today, but hopefully that gives you a nice idea, maybe some ideas to help you, on your journey as a parent who wants to do the best they can for their children. Honestly, it starts with you. What do you need to do for yourself, right? To be able to stay regulated and present in this moment. So yeah, there's going to be 3 others of these presentations. One will be on self-care. I'd love for you to join us on that. Next time will be all about the window of tolerance, what it is and why learning about it can actually help you. Okay. So if you do have any questions, I can, however you were able to log into this class, you could probably type it in, use that. Well, maybe I'm not sure. If you have any extra questions, you're welcome to email me at b, like Bob, b.garcia, Garcia, at Polara Health. And in fact, this is how you spell Polara right here. There's polarahealth.com. So b.garcia@polarahealth.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So finally, in conclusion here, we just want everybody to know that Resilient Arizona Crisis Counseling Program is 100% free. All you need to do is call 211 and ask for help if you need help, if you need any kind of crisis counseling. And we're here for you. They will refer you to someone that you can talk to, and they'd be more than happy to be able to just walk alongside and be part of your healing journey. At the bottom, it says West Yavapai Guidance Clinic. That's who that's used to be what we were. Now we are now called Polara Health. There it is. And so thank you so much for watching today's presentation. Again, it was brought to you by the Crisis Response Network and SAMHSA and Polara Health. Have a beautiful day.